was a ball box. So
it was really weird when I read that that email. I thought, wow, I must not have explained myself very well, because anything I do has a lid on it. I've, in fact, I have to start with a story. Tom did a gnome or a gonk a couple months ago. A few weeks before that, I had seen Emma Cook, the tiny turner, do one on a Zoom thing. And then a few months before that, Rebecca DeGroot had done one. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking gonks are going to be the new pen bowls. You know, everybody's going to be turning gnomes like they were using color crayons for making things. Well, I had to make a gnome because Amy wanted one. But of course, mine has to have, it's got to be a pot. It's not just all glued together, so it's solid out. It's a what do they call them? Collaborative, where Amy did the hair and I did the turning. But the idea for tonight was brought about Easter time. I had just bought these intrinsic colors from England. Well, actually, I bought them from Jeff Horner, who is the dealer here for Sheen, Hampshire Sheen. And my sister sees this. I had tried an apple. I thought that would be red, and she fell in love with it. And she looks at me and says, "Can you make me some more?" And of course, yeah, no problem. Can I have a dozen? Because she's going to give them to her kids' teachers. And before I could think of the number, I'm going, of course. Well, now I'm in production mode to make a dozen. And then this just came about with this thing. And then it's weird how events roll into one another. Jeff is going to be demonstrating next month, finishing the finish. Jeff is the Hampshire Sheen. He also sells Yorkshire Grit and Nova equipment, stuff like that. But I've seen him demonstrate before, and he's a class act. The guy knows his stuff. So I did these apples, and I got into making them so that it had to be relatively quick, because like Ron, I get, after so many, okay, I'm looking for something else to do. So I like production runs because it makes me more efficient and more thoughtful. I go through the whole process. I don't skip a step and then have to go back and redo it again. I hate doing that. We're going to get into we'll talk about the coloring later, so we'll go into these things. But for now, the shape is, this one is different in that I coned it. It's cupped all the way through. I have one here that they're all cupped. Where is it? I've got props. Okay, this one. This one, you see how it's domed, where it's not cupped into it. It's got a bump correlating with this inlay here. I started looking at apples, and to me, an apple is a Macintosh or a Delicious, right? Well, just for a little background, there are 2,500 varieties of apples in the United States, 7,500 in the world. So you can imagine you can go any color you want. You can go almost black to bright green. And I had to start thinking, well, what's going to make something look like an apple immediately upon appearance? Is it the color or is it the shape? So I got into a little bit of that sort of thing. I'm bored. We have COVID, and I just played around with the idea. So the one that we're going to color is one that I've already turned. This one's hickory, and it's a snug fit. We'll talk about fit in a minute, but this one you can hear it squeak. it pops and stuff. It's all those neat things. And then I use a little branch. Originally I had just pruned my blueberry bushes. So this is a blueberry branch that's on there. So it makes it look a little more realistic or what have you. So what we're going to do is I start with the lid first, just because I find it's easier to turn the tenon to fit into the lid. Well, no, I'll have this on there, and then I'm going to have the lid to fit onto it. It's just easier with a parting tool to take this surface down, as opposed to going in here and scraping. I always take that little extra, and it does, now it's too loose. You know, a guy said it the other day, it's a French fit, too loose. Yeah. Okay, you don't get it. All right. So what I have here is...
You have to be from Bernardville to understand that.
Well, actually, the West Side. It really doesn't matter, end grain or side grain. You don't really see the grain first. You see the color first. I have, this one is end grain. The hickory is end grain. I have ash on here now, and it's side grain. So it's going to be in bowl orientation. What I do is hold them between centers, turn a tenon. Oh, this is weird. Okay. Turn a tenon on either end, part it in the middle. I've gotten away from parting all the way through because you should step your way down into it. Now I just go with 1/4 of an inch or so, and I run it on the bandsaw. I was in production mode. I was hurrying, a thin parting tool. I went a little too far. I'll tell you, I didn't have to change my shorts, but it was close. I ended up with like a lollipop. I had the parting tool in my hand, the wood here. I ripped it right out of the chuck. I just put everything down, shut it off, went into the house, had a cup of tea. It was one of those moments, you know. So I tend to hurry, and tonight this is really, really bizarre to be doing this. Thank God Tom is here, because I would feel like I'm talking in a cell. Here I am in jail. Finally, they caught up with me. So I've got this is the top. The other thing that I want to note as well is the 1/3, 2/3, or 2/5, 3/5. I don't really bother with it. I don't know if, well, here's one that I didn't bother with it at all. It's more of a hollow vessel. This is the one where I thought, what's important? Is it the shape of the apple? And then I went so far as to cut and, where's this camera?
That's a big ass delicious apple.
Yeah, this is, but this, oh, okay. No, that's fine. This carving took me longer to do this than to turn the apple. It's like, Ron, you were saying, I have to slow down, or you were going too fast. There's something that you said that this will slow you down. Turning, when you have you said you had too much stuff. You have too many finished products and things. Well, if you want to extend the length of a project, start coloring, texturing, and carving. It drives you crazy, but it slows you right down. It just takes on that whole dimension. So this is the top. Again, I didn't bother with 1/3, 2/3, but it ends up that it's pretty darn close. This is 2 inches, and this one's a little over an inch. So it'll depend on the color as to whether it's a green apple is a Granny Smith, is it? I think so. Yeah, Tom's nodding. So, okay. Bowl gouge, because we're in bowl orientation, a little high. I haven't turned in a couple of weeks. This is going to be fun. I wanted to do a little something today. It's going to be loud. the reason why I'm not going through the whole process is because you don't have to hear or see me rough out a square block and part it off and do everything else, because we want to get into the coloring. Now, one thing is that if I stop this, you can see maybe not, but there's a witness mark there. When I when I separate the two, I leave a little bit of the tenon on the cover, so I have a little bit of a reference point. So I don't want to go beyond that, because right away I'll be failed. I'll have a failure. Which camera is that? Oh, okay. Hey, there's 3 cameras here. This is okay. Gotta have
Marcel,
more
do you
respect
use
for the-
a jig to cut that on the bandsaw? When you run it through the bandsaw, do you use a special jig so it doesn't take off on you?
It's not a special jig. It's actually take a square block of wood, cut it round on the bandsaw. You've got these 4 corners, and I'll use them to jam into the front. I've made myself a little bit of a rig. So yeah, because if you cut this on the bandsaw and it's round, it can go in. If you're just going to say, well, I'll use my fingers, your fingers will hurt. It will get caught just the same. It can.
All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Definitely. Yeah. No. I'm glad you put that out, because it's a big. The safety police might be here. Hence, I got to tell you, I'm wearing long pants and I'm wearing shoes for the first time in I don't know how long. I actually have a pair of socks and steel-toed shoes on, safety glasses. I'm not wearing a mask. Yada, yada, yada. But the most important thing is to read, follow, and understand. Is that how it goes? Yeah. Read, follow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to just, what I want to do is I just want to create that little divot in there. I think it's Jimmy Cruz that says, this little detail will make it look like you considered it. It'll look like you thought about the whole process. So now.
So Marcel, you start with a closed flute and then open it as you go, right?
Yeah, the initial cut here is where the flute is 45 degrees away from me here, and I've got this is a where'd you go?
We can see it.
Here we go. Okay, so this is what Johannes Michelson's with his vector grind. He came out with this because people were having a hard time hand sharpening his, but you'll see me use it in a minute. This is his grind, but freehand. And Jorge, forget his last name. He belongs to the Granite State Woodturners. We were at that demo from Hannes, and Jorge I had messaged him, and he was like talking about the rolled over edge and stuff. And it's a little bit different, but I've started using his jig, and it's it does make it easier. But I'm going in both ways because we have side grain here, right? So if I try to come up this way, I'm going to get a blowout. So what I'm doing is I'm basically just coning this, and I just kind of roll to a clean. And I'm just going to take a little bit more. Like I said, it's come down in here. Now you're going to see, this is something I've never done before. Is do a demonstration where I'm including coloring And you're also going to see me do something else in a minute. And John's still there. Yeah, okay. Want to make this bigger? Very, very weird doing this straight over the bed. My lathe at home has a pivoting head, and I'm used to doing like turning this way. So I would have already pivoted it this way to be able to see better. It's going to be weird. But the reason why I asked if John was still there is that it's the overhead, right? It's this, the end. Got it. I see them do this.
Negative rake scraper.
Just for you, John.
All right.
I pay attention. People talk, I listen, you know? And I'll tell you something. These are sweet.
Yep.
I have another one. The only thing is now, the point that I really wanted to make was, if I have a real sharp corner in here and I've got this radius, if I come to contacting right and left side, I'll still get a catch, or I'll get a dig in, or some kind of tearing. So you can change the radius by just tipping the tool up on its side instead of holding it flat as you would a traditional negative rake. But it's just something that, you know, you come in there and see how I can change the radius, and it's not changing the angle as much because I'm still flat on the tool rest, but I've cocked it so that it's on its side, and now that circle is a different circumference, I guess would be the right way to put it.
Different
But
RPM.
anyway, so
Or
I'm just
you
gonna,
could just make another one that's got a much smaller radius tip.
yeah, you could. And this surface here was just done with a parting tool. So I want to clean this up, give it a sharper edge, and I'm going to lose my witness mark because I don't need it anymore. If I were finishing, one sec. I just want to check one thing. I want to see. Oh, I'm still way thick. Okay. You know what? We'll just leave it like that. I was going to take it down thinner, but we'll just leave it. So if it were to be a finished piece, I've got this nice and clean. I would sand it. I've started using spray sealer as opposed to brush on liquid. It dries so quick. I'm buying the Krylon. I don't know what it is, but it's got all the good stuff in it. Benzene, toluene, all the brain killing stuff. And trust me when I say brain killing, it's not, I'm the type that, you know, oh yeah, I smell it, but it's no problem. Remember, I'm doing a dozen of them. It's a lousy high, and it's an even worse down when you get off that stuff. It's just horrible. The headache afterwards was just crazy. So now I would have a fan, windows open, and everything else. I would spray this. I like that spray because in minutes it's dry. Then I would just buff it and then put a coat of wax on the inside. So it's got a semblance of a.
I can switch over.
Oh, straight on. Oh, whoop. Where are we? We're here. So this is just sanding sealer, buffed out, and then one coat of wax. So this would be, the inside would be done. So then we move on to the base. Oh, another
How do you-
little trick too.
How do you buff it out? Are you using the Beal system? Or
No, when I say buff, I'm using a gray Nibrex, Webrex. You know that woven abrasive. The gray one is like 1,000 grit. Yeah, this stuff.
oh, okay.
Like
Just use
Scotch
this.
Brite.
Like a Scotch Brite, but it's this comes in different grades, and I think the gray is like 1,000 grit. What's nice about this is that if you're using sandpaper, even if you're going to go with 800, it's going to load up right away, and it might leave some scratch marks. This I've yet to see leave scratch marks, and if it loads up, you just shake it out. It'd be good for finishing. Some guys will even just use the shavings, just shove shavings in there and just hold them. It's just to what's the term? Denib. Take
Burnish.
away the fuzzies and yeah, do a burnishing.
Hey, Marcel, on that flat surface that you finished there, do you do it just slightly tapered so the outer edge definitely makes contact?
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
Well, you already
Yeah,
did
you
it,
know-
right?
No, I didn't.
Sorry.
The traumas of live TV. So I would use you could use a scraper, you could use anything. One of the drawbacks, I didn't bring any of my stuff. I'm going to use a parting tool just to make this square. What Ron was alluding to was I need a shoulder to receive the.
Well,
All right,
no,
calm down.
that wasn't what I was talking about. I was talking about the flat face.
Oh,
A lot of
It's
people do
contact.
it so it tilts inwards
It's-
a little bit so the outer edge makes contact.
yeah, yeah. But this part here, you ought to have as square as you can get it, so that you're. Well, all right, we'll just say that's good. And just to make sure. That's just a shearing cut. I'm using the bottom right wing of the tool, and it's almost completely closed onto the face of the wood. Remember, this is side grain, so I can do this. And it just does what the term says. It shear scrapes, so I get a very smooth surface there. You know, and it's great because I can say it's very smooth. The only guy here, he's sworn to secrecy. It can be as rough as hell, and you can't tell, you know. So now again, it's another bowl. I'm going to empty it out before I mess around with the tenon. I have found not so much with straight grain ash like this, but if you're using something that's got some funky grain pattern to it, it can have some internal stresses. When I hollow it out, it's not going to really hollow out that much, but if you were to make them very, very thin, the release of those stresses can throw this out of round ever so slightly. So if I spend a lot of time now on that tenon, get it to where it's a squeak-on, nice tight fit, and I go through the process of hollowing it out, and it goes a little bit oval, all that effort is wasted. So I hollow out first, then I adjust the tenon, then I put the two back together again, and we go with the outer shape. So it's kind of, as opposed to a bowl where you shape the outside, and then you hollow the inside to match the outside. In this case, we're going to hollow the inside and then form the outside and you leave it a little bit thicker so you don't have to worry about blowing through it. It's something that I've been horsing around with. So now I've changed tools, so I have to adjust. Okay, so again, see how I enter? As soon as you have that little cut in there, now I don't even need my left hand anymore because the bevel is rubbing on the back wall. So as long as I keep my tip up and I just dig it out. So you're going in and basically now, because your left hand is really only a pivot point. I'm gonna have to leave, it's getting dark. Mommy's gonna come and get me. I'm surprised no one has said, well, you could just use a Forstner bit. Nobody's even thought, no? Because that would be, again, it's ash. I don't know how old it is. It's been cut a long, long time.
Marcel, it's definitely dry, correct?
Oh yeah, it's probably over 10 years old that I've had this stuff in my shop. What I'm doing is I'm using up, rather than, I don't want to move the wood, so I've been frantically turning it instead of moving it out of the shop into the shed. And well, I'm running out of time. As you get so this is going to be really thick. Okay, so we've got about an inch down there. I'm not going to worry too much. Square this up. And hopefully you'll see when you do this kind of a cut. Yeah. Can we go to the tailstock? I don't know how Tom does this himself. I can just simply ask him to change cameras. He's got a, can you see up at the top here? That's, yeah, they can see it. Okay, the fibers are running through. Because I cut this surface, you're always going to get those little ton of hires. So you never want to do this cut last. You want to, after you face this, then I want to make one clean cut on the inside. Or, again, Mr. Drost, this time this was a right-handed scraper, so it's got an angle to it. It's thicker, it's wider here than on the top, but I don't really care. I just made it into a negative rate, and one is a negative, other one 50-degree inclusive or 25-degree each side, and I just kind of offer it up, taking too much. And just bring it around. And see how the wispy right here, so it's taking away all that rough stuff. And it's virtually effortless. And one of my issues with scrapers is that you're as you're coming up the side, you're hitting end grain, side grain, and it can pluck out, especially that can pluck out the fibers. But with a negative rake like this, it's truly amazing how nice a finish you get off of it. Yeah, I never thought I'd live to see the day that I would be sold on it, but I am. And there's just one spot in there that's going to annoy me. There. Okay. There's a certain, like I was saying earlier, there's a certain profile to the tool, and if the profile of the inside of the bowl isn't the same, they're not going to jive. So you have to kind of work the two together. And now, I hope I didn't go too big with, no, perfect, okay. So we have plenty of real estate to take away. So there's two things to consider. It's the length of the tenon as well as the width. You want it to bottom out onto this. I made a little shoulder in here so that the length of the tenon is important. And a word of caution, if you're going to make this really long, sometimes a lid will fit. It's kind of cool. You pull it off, it's got a 1/2 inch. If you're going to make this shoulder with a parting tool, you have to be careful that the top of the tool here isn't touching the wood in there. So that's where a flatter scraper type thing, or a skew,
A Badan.
which is or a Badan. Badan's a little thick though, so actually a round skew is ideal, because the round skew is going to fit inside this radius. You don't have a shoulder to it because it's rounded over, so you don't have any of the issues that you have with this high shoulder here that could possibly contact the wood. So so I'm just gonna take a breath. I want to clean. I roughed these out, or rather I cut this at least a month ago. So the wood has moved a little bit. I was going to bring it. I had another one that and I brought so much stuff. I only have a truck. But I had one yesterday, was slipping on and off, real smooth, very, very nice. And it's a 1/2 inch long. Today, I couldn't get it off because it's raining. There's no finish on it. So it reacts immediately to moisture, and it just swelled all the craziness. So now I'm just going to bring this down. I think I have a lot to do. So you do have yeah. Let's speed up the process a little bit. I have quite a bit to remove, so I'll just use a gouge. I'm very reluctant to use a parting tool into side grain. I've witnessed too many near disasters. So and this little gouge with that grind on there, it's very, very pointy. It's almost like using a detail gouge, and I will sometimes do that, where I'll use just a 3/8 detail gouge. The one thing with using a gouge, though, is that I'm taking off very, very little wood, but I'm also, as soon as I remove here, you're removing it from the other side. So you've got to really take your time and sneak up on it. And there's always, you always get to that point where just one more cut. And then you get a real loose fit. There.
Marcel, would you consider turning a taper there to prevent the overshoot?
Yeah. If we had more time, I would, what Jim is alluding to is you taper it down on the very edge till you get a fit, and then you can kind of line it up. And if the taper goes in but it doesn't go all the way, then you know that the taper is good, so you just turn the rest off at the taper. Otherwise, you just remove it and then keep and take some more off. But now I've bottomed out, so I'm thinking my taper here is too long. You wouldn't think it would squeal like that, huh? But it's a small tool, and there. All right. We'll say that's good. So now if you notice, I've still got a flat over. Yeah. See the flat right here? It's not completely round. I mean, it's truly a blank. What we'll do now is, right? Yeah. So now we've got that shape inside, and we want to make the top of the apple. First, I want to round it all over. We'll take the bowl gouge, and you can do like a shear cut where I've got the tool, and I'm seeing more and more pull cuts and on YouTube and Zoom and all these. It's incredible how people are using the side cut. Let me show you. If I go straight on this way, and I'm using the tip of the tool, and I'm just going to round this up. Okay, so that's just a light cut across. And please, well, maybe you can't see, but there's some wicked tear out right here. Can we get close? Yeah, no. Ooh, we can do this, right? Oh. Okay. Right. I can feel it. You probably you see the ridges there. That's the summerwood. And it tore right out of it. Here, you see how this is smoother. Okay. Because what I was doing was I was presenting the tool straight on, and I was just hacking away like that. Now what I'm going to do is lean the tool over, keep the camera there, and I'm just going to use that back wing. Now I'm looking at the screen, I'm not looking at the camera. This is freaky. But you see the hairs, those shavings? And just one light pass, and I'm almost to the bottom. Not quite, because there was a lot of tear out there. Those bumps, that flat spot that's still there, I can barely feel it. We're turning at 1700 RPM. I just want to get Oh, what I just did there, you don't want to do that. To check the roundness, put your tool on it. Do as I say, don't do as I do. And, okay, so we've got, this is the lid, so it's the top of the apple. I want to start curving this over. What I'm doing here is I've got the tool down, the handle is down in my pocket, if you will, down by my hip. Okay, so I've got a low angle on the tool, and I just ride the bevel on there, raise the handle till I start getting a cut, and then roll around, and I'm raising the handle as I go around. And you just keep on repeating that same motion. Now, all this tenon has got to go, and I got to make it deeper. So here's where, using the bottom wing, or the left side of the gouge, I've got it up against my side. I bring the tool is parallel to the floor almost, and all I'm doing is I just nibble away. Just shift your hips. And I'll just bring it over. And I end up with a true scrape. If I were to continue going like that, I would probably dig in. So all I wanted to do is get rid of that. I don't like this curve, so I'm gonna give this. And now I'm running out of tool rest. So I'm gonna move this over. Always shut off the lathe before you move the tool rest. And I'm gonna bring this down into a now I had almost so you're really moving a lot, and what I'm doing here is I'm coming around with the tool. I've got to open it up a little bit in order to engage the left side of the wing, and then I roll back over again before getting to this stub here. I don't like losing the tailstock too soon, because this is where I flip them around a lot. Okay, you got to start seeing an apple. Right now, it's just a straight line. So I'm going to come, now that I've got that started and I still have the advantage of the tailstock, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to bring this down. Being very mindful of the jaws. Now, with that last cut, you see I left a little bit of a shoulder, so I'm not going to go past that anymore. And I'm just going to decide on that point where it becomes an apple to me, as opposed to an acorn or. Now this is up too flat. Come over here. Ooh, too much. Little distraction, and I just. Okay, so I'm gonna just bring this down a little bit more. And now we'll come up to the top, and what I like to do, again, it's side grain, so I can get away with what I'm doing now. I can dig this out. Now I'm using a 1/2-inch bowl gouge. When I get into the stuff like this, I go to the 3/8. Only because it lets me get in there and I can just scrape the heck out of it. Now you could leave that. I debated whether to leave this thing as the stem. You know, you could do that as well. It would just create another problem with coloring and stuff. So I elected to get rid of it. So I'm just going to bring it down to a point. And I'm going to lose it in a minute. So I'm going to stop the lathe and see. Oh, I knew it. Okay. I still have a flat. You see that lighter spot? That's a flat spot there, which will only take a moment. We'll do a little shear scraping on there.
Leave it for a bruise. Couple bruise.
Trouble with shear scraping is your body gets in the way. Does that go away, I think? Almost. Bear with me. Because I do want to give it some semblance of, like, I know what I'm doing. All right, now I've got, it's flat here, and then it dives off. So I want to curve this a little bit. There was a, I don't know if he's still around. He belonged to the guild. He critiqued one of our July meetings when I was with the Granite State Woodturners, and Jerry Osgood, and he had turned, like, I don't know what, Jim, 40 years ago, and he would, you know, make no bones about starting with 40 grit. But the thing that I took away from that meeting was a straight line is a missed opportunity. And if you have a straight or a flat spot, you missed your chance there. So I don't know, I've always carried that with me. And I do end up with flat spots, basically because I'm rushing around, but you want to try to get them as even as you possibly can. So I'm happy with that. Okay. If I'm going to lose this, and I still want to do some stuff to it, so I'll just pop that out of there. And you have a couple, I've got a, oh, you know what? It's live, right? What can go wrong? All I want to do is remove that little nip there. So I'm just gently, and because I'm pushing this way and not going sideways, I have less chance of ripping the cover off than if I were to go this way by cutting in like this.
Packaging plastic would work marvelous to ensure it
Well,
doesn't
you know, the residue of that is bad. So
I'm
my
not talking about
preference
tape.
is-
I'm talking about
shrink wrap.
the shrink wrap stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Or you can use tape. On a piece this size, using this stuff here, I mean, it's just, you know, this is a whole lot easier. And okay. One of the things that some of you may not know, I used to, back in a former life, way back in the early 2000s, I was making full-size birdhouses. And I made and sold about 700 of them in a few years' time. One of the methods that I was doing, I was using the Martel hook tool because it was all end grain. And drilling out I would start with a hole first, putting it into the quill and cranking and stuff. Like we were saying before, Ron, I get very, very tired of that. What I did was I set myself up with, it's a drill chuck with a handle. I had an 8-inch, half-inch drill bit in here, and I would just shove it into the thing. And just to, as I was saying, I'm packing stuff up, and I came across this thing and went, oh my God, that brings back memories. But all you need to do, I've got a little bit of a dimple there. I don't need the tool rest. All I need is to support my shaking hands. It will find its center. It really will, if I give it a chance. You've got to, I didn't get a good enough dimple to start it. And the only disadvantage to that is that it will find its own center. But in my case, I was using the pith, and if the pith went off, the drill bit wanted to follow it. So it worked, but you had to make allowances. And all I want to do is I want a little bit of a hole in there for my, so all that just to not have to use the quill. But now I want to clean that up a little. I've got a little bit of a divot there. Yeah, okay. So I would sand at this point, not do any coloring, just leave it at that. And everything is, it's all working to plan. I'm going to have to monkey with this to get it off, right? So in my toward the end of my furniture installation career, I called these my Superman gloves. These things increase your gripping power to the 10th degree. All right, so I can get a better grip on it, and guess what? It ain't coming off. Then God made strap wrenches. I brought everything just to show you this is the worst case scenario. And now with a strap wrench, as long as you're holding it right onto the side, oh, come on. All right, we might have to just put this aside, but you're going to get the idea. And there's the problem. It leaves a black mark on it. Well, guess what, folks? I've also, this is where a skew comes in very handy. You jam a skew into it. But this would probably be a good time to stop because that ain't gonna come out of there. You remember that last whack that I gave it? That really, yeah, that sat at home. The other alternative would be, now you could sit it in the microwave for about 15 seconds and pull it out, and it might loosen it enough. That's worked in the past for me. I got to give it one more try.
Try locking the head. Block the head.
Well, oh, yeah, there we go. Who said that? Okay. But you heard it squeal, so it's raining now, so tomorrow this is going to be a sloppy fit. If the sun comes out, it's just the way it's going to be. So you could use a jam chuck at this point to finish off the bottom. I have had an aversion to jam chucks since my days at Homestead, with Andy's classes. We use jam chucks a lot, and I ended up calling them damn chucks because I could never get them to work right. But what I'm going to do here, same thing as all I did now is snug it on. I can pull this off. It's just there, just to hold it. With the tailstock, I'm going to basically do the same thing that I did with the lid. I'll just bring this in.
Marcel,
Yes,
what
sir.
kind of wall thicknesses are you looking for?
It really doesn't matter. We'll get into that when I show you the finished pieces. It's something that since you raised the subject, I have found that turners are the only ones that are really concerned about wall thickness. They tend to gravitate, normal people tend to gravitate towards something that has a little bit of heft to it. I saw myself, I was at the Sunapee Fair, and Charlie Sheaf had some stuff in the Living with Crafts, or the selling booth. And Charlie does some really, really neat stuff. But he had some hollow forms. I had to stop myself. I'm sticking my finger into hollow forms. Who does that? Only a wood turner. You know, turning it over, looking at the bottom, checking the wall thickness. But it's inevitable. In my case, I find with these, they're going to be handled if they're going to, like my sister has given them to teachers who are going to have them on their desks. Well, somebody's going to knock it over. I don't want it to break. It might dent, but at least it won't break. So it's got to have some kind of physical integrity, I guess would be the term.
My fifth grade nun would just throw it at you.
Huh?
So my fifth grade nun would just throw it at you.
Yeah, and yeah.
I couldn't quite follow what you're saying when you're saying one gentleman didn't mind using 40 grit sandpaper.
Oh, Jerry was not a wood turner. He was a furniture maker. I believe he was with the Furniture Masters.
Yes, that's right.
He's probably gone now. I haven't heard of Jerry in a number of years, but he's of that old vintage. Do any of you know Dave Emerson? He
Yes.
lives up in Canterbury. Dave was up. I put Dave and Jerry and Wayne Marcoux, who's been gone 10 years now. All those older guys, they were the ones that I met early on, back in the last century, the late 90s, early 2000s, at the Shaker Village. We put on Wood Days. It was a lot of fun. But we had invited Jerry to critique one of our meetings. And I don't know what the logic was for a furniture maker to be critiquing a wood turner's work, but I guess he was available. But he had some. So here you just with the bottom apple. it's here though that you start seeing differences between Delicious or Macintosh. Macintosh is shorter, squatter, more cylindrical. The Delicious is a little elongated and whatnot. So I should lose, to my eye, I ought to bring this up to about there. Are we on? Yeah. So I'm going to, whoopsie. Sorry, I lost my voice. Okay. Because I'm not, and I'm just about to lose my tool rest. So I have to stop. When I say I'm losing it, I'm gonna go off the edge there. Move it in just a whisker, and I'll just, what time is it, Tom?
It's a bit delayed, about 40 minutes.
Oh, good, okay. Because you'll see it's the same thing as before. I just want to hollow, and some will make a little hole in the, you see, when you see fruit turned, a lot of times they're solid and they're using a screw chuck, and they'll hold it at both ends. And to hide the hole at the bottom, you can use a clove. You just glue a clove in there, or you can leave a little dimple. I've seen this also, where somebody will leave that little nub, and then they'll either burn it or scorch it or do something just to give you that little black point that's always at the bottom of the apple. Now here, I don't have any other way of supporting this, so I'll just knock that off. I would not recommend this, so I'm going to do it. I've got the tool up on my side, and I'm simply holding the wood, getting warm. And just by doing a little pull cut, make sure you don't knock it off. And okay, so we've got an apple. And this one would be more of the Macintosh. So the turning is done. This is the part that I'm most frantic about, because I'm not a wood colorer. I've been a staunch brown and round guy forever, and it's just in the last year. And what got me into it was, if you subscribe to different wood turning groups on Facebook or no, what's the other one?
Instagram.
Instagram, right? Yeah. In the morning, I'm having coffee. I'm just scrolling. The stuff that I end up stopping at and taking note of is the stuff that's carved, colored, or both, or pyrography or some kind of ornamentation to it after the fact. I'm not yet into the Alumilite, the resin stuff, and I don't know if I ever will. So far, I've never turned a pen, so there's a possibility I'll never turn resin. But coloring is something that I've just now started to realize that, it does change things a lot, but it opens up a whole can of worms. Believe it or not, these two are using the same color. This is what he calls pear. This is pear. But the color of the wood inside is already orangey. So it just sucked up the green. You can see, you can't really see it that well, but there are green highlights right here. And this is after sanding it back, adding more color, which you can do. This one is much greener because I bleached it. Yeah, I bleached it with 2-part bleach. If any of you look for that, I got all my information from a guy called Mike Peace. He's on YouTube. It's like a 20-minute thing, because if you're making your own or mixing your own, you're using lye and I use Baquicil, which is a 28% hydrogen peroxide. It's pool bleach. But he tells you how to be careful. You want to mix it properly. And once the 2 parts come together, 24 hours later, you got to dump it. It's no good anymore. There's a whole science to that. But the bleach on this, there's 2 coats of the bleach, and you won't see it. But there's a spot on the inside here where I had some of the bleach on my gloved hand, and it imparted on the inside, and it bleached the inside. I did not bleach the inside. Oh, yeah. See right there? See that lighter spot? That was me grabbing it with my gloved hand, and it had some bleach on it. There's another spot right there where it's lighter. I didn't bleach the rest of it. So and now my point before of whether it's side grain or end grain, when you look at it like this, this is end grain. So you can really, you can line up the grain to where, now, can you go back to the overhead? We're switching cameras. So see how you can see the grain lines there. So this, but the first thing you'd notice if you grab it is, oh, well, I added a little bit of red up here. One of the things that I got from listening to these people talking about dyes and stuff, Martin Sabin Smith is the owner of Hampshire Sheen, and he has a line of colors that are called intrinsic colors. That's the stuff that Jeff Hornung sells. It's not that expensive. It comes in from England. He wholesales it. It's stupid crazy if you buy directly from Hampshire Sheen. You have to pay there's a $90 tax on anything he ships, whether it's 1 bottle or 100 bottles, something to do with tariffs and whatnot. So Jeff, obviously he's retailing it, so he buys bulk and separates the price. He's selling it here for basically the same amount of money that they're paying for it over there. The kit that I bought is this little. This was $35 plus shipping, and I bought a few other things, so I don't remember the numbers. But they're little bottles, and you'd think, well, that's not going to last me very long. I have done all these pieces here, plus at least 2 dozen more apples because once my other sister found out about it, she wanted some too. I mean, this is becoming an ongoing thing. I'm going to be planting orchards soon. But there are 12 colors here. If you buy the larger bottles, they're 125 milliliters, which is about 9 ounces, and they're $12.50 a bottle. I bet you that will last you a lifetime. The stuff goes on. It's water-based, but you can manipulate it on the wood. So this is, like I said before, this is hickory. I've purposely, this was, you know how the hickory often has these black markings in them over in here, and then there's a little bit more on the back side. So just, oh yeah, and this one had a crack, which I filled with CA and shavings. So you've got that telltale line. So this is going to hide a lot of those blemishes. What I like to do is, obviously, now this is something else, PPE. PPE, right? These I bought from Harbor Freight, very inexpensive. These are the extra large gloves. I don't have that big a hand. And I'll tell you what, it'll cut off the circulation in about an hour. So I don't do this for very, very long. But they're inexpensive and it works. You can use vinegar and water to get the coloring out of your hands, but then you smell like a salad. And it's always a little telltale sign. So if you've got red in your cuticles or something, you know, you're on your own.
Hey, Marcel, I have one quickie question. How did you get
Please.
the stems to look like they're at an angle?
It's how I cut them.
Well, I'm looking at the one at the corner on the toolbox, and it looks like it's at like a 5-degree angle.
Yeah, literally, Ron. This I put them in there with Type Bond, Type 3.
Yeah.
Okay, just a little drop. Stick it in and give it a little cock to the side.
Oh, okay, okay.
And
So you're
I mean,
drilling a hole straight in.
oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm also they're all they're all 1/4-inch holes. So this one was turned, I'm holding it in pin jaws, and I turned a tenon on the end of it.
Okay.
So I've got it in, and I parted it off there, and I shoved it into the hole. So you can, you know, it's a lot bigger than what would be realistic, but you're walking that fine line between impressionistic and realistic, you know. So we're just kind of playing that game. Now I've got to find the colors. One of the things that I've done is, now the one color that I like the most is the one that you'll see. You see how the darkness at the bottom? It's called honey. It's the yellow that's going to kind of blend everything together. Now what I want to do is start with the bottom. I don't like holding it in my hand and twisting it around, because it can twist, the lid can twist on it. And also I don't have as much control, and I can't really play with it as much. So what I started doing was, I don't use, there's a lot of guys that I've seen over in the UK, they're using paper towel and a full sheet of it. They fold it up in 4, and you'll see, I'm sure that Jeff is going to use Yorkshire grit, which is an abrasive paste. and they ladle it on like it's peanut butter sandwich. Wow, these guys are most of them are supported by Yorkshire Grit. Stickers on their lathes saying Yorkshire Grit. Well, guess what? Yorkshire Grit funds their habit. So you want to get a goodly amount on, and I want to get, so there's green. And I just kind of, while I'm at it, I'll just dab the rest of the, because I'm cheap. The reason why I'm using a small rag is because all of the dye that stays in the rag is going to go into the trash. So I'm using, these are, actually I'm being a little generous here. These are kind of big. And flame is there's burnt orange, flame, and honey are the three reds. And they're all a little bit different, but they all kind of blend together. So now just to give it a little semblance of an apple, see how I can just dab it in, and the flame is kind of a cherry red. And right away I got it. See the dark splotch? That's Marcel not doing a good job of sanding. So there's another point that if you haven't, Martin has a t-shirt, I think, that says passionate about finishing or something to that effect. Fanatical about finishing. And I can see now the logic to all of that is that as soon as you start putting this stuff on, it can be lipstick on a pig, or it can end up being something that you like. So as long as I've got a little bit at the bottom, now I can mount this to the, what I have here is it's just a block of wood. It's basically a jam chuck. Put that on there, and I'm going to use because I have the hole, there's not going to be any color put in there. I'm not turning the lathe on. I'm simply using it to hold it. So I could also use a bench vise or some kind of method of holding it, and go back to the green. There's and I'm trying to remember to make sure that I tell you this correctly. You want to start with the darker colors first, and then go to the lighter ones. And because, oh, you can see, all right. So see where the red and the green come together here? And there's like a real sharp line. I just added a little more green to this, and now I'm going to go into a circular motion. And it bleeds it out. It blends them together. So it's what he calls moving the color. And you can do that afterwards just by just adding random bits of green. And then the deepest red is ruby. And that's the one, I swear, this is ruby on oak. And I was saying before how, let's back up a little bit, about grain and stuff. This is side grain. And these two blocks of red oak lived in the tree like this. You see the dark here matches the dark here. So what I did was this was a board. I cut it into two pieces, made them round, and then they come together. And that sound, this must weigh 17 pounds. No, a few ounces. And the wall thickness is quite thick. It's quite chunky, but it's red oak, and it'll sit there. You can open the window. I don't care if it's a hurricane, it's not going to knock this baby over, and it's going to hold there. So this is the kind of thing, and this is where the grain pattern tends to get obliterated because see how the colors don't come together until you get to that point there, but it's the grain. I mean, it's the color. It's not really the grain that you're noticing. So it's kind of fun because if you have odd pieces of wood, this is cherry, and a lot more yellow on this than the other one, but there's deep pockets of red. Okay, ruby. No, flame. Where's the ruby? So see this, see how it's not that much different. But another thing that you're going to notice is it changes color as it dries. It goes on a certain color and you think, oh my God, it's like this one here. I could still see the green like that other one, the light green. The next morning, it had just leached into the wood and the pigment was like gone. It was just not there anymore. And that's where I can see the need for bleaching. But in this case, the hickory is light enough. And if you miss a spot, what I'm going to do is the other thing that I liked about this is I didn't have to go out and buy a spray gun, start getting into all that stuff. Not that they're that expensive, but that's a whole other learning curve that I'm not just ready to invest with. This is something I kind of enjoy. It's doodling, you know, it's just mucking around and ends up halfway decent. So much the better. If it doesn't, I can simply turn this right back off or sand it down. It only penetrates maybe a 1/16 of an inch or a millimeter, 1.5 millimeters. So it doesn't really go that far down into the wood that it's not salvageable, that you can start
Marcel,
over
I have a
again.
couple of questions for you, Marcel.
Oh, good.
I have a tendency to oversand to about a 2000 grit. Would that burnish the wood and prevent the stain from taking effect?
In theory, yes, and all of the books will tell you, and all of the guys making this stuff will tell you that you're not giving the you're closing the cells too much so that that you won't get good penetration. But the way I'm applying this, I'm rubbing it into the wood, so I'm forcing it, so to speak, into the fibers. So I'm not. I tried to 6. I went to 600. I didn't go any higher than that.
All right.
Saw no difference.
The second question is, does one stain happen to seal the wood a bit to prevent the next subsequent stain from taking effect?
No, and time doesn't affect it either. What happens is it just lays on the surface.
He just threw another pass for a touchdown.
And
Well,
I
actually,
can.
the kicker is.
I can't hear
They're
you.
gonna be looking for a new kicker.
I know. I don't know what's going on. So, okay. The next day you can come back and continue. If let's say, I want to add a little more yellow to it, you can do that.
Okay.
The drop point is when you apply sealer to it.
Oh, okay.
And what they'll do is, because it's water-based, it's going to raise the grain. So after it's dry, you can force dry it with a hair dryer or a heat gun or whatever, and you'll get that raised grain. So that's when the Nibrex pad will come out, and then they'll spray seal it or water, brush seal it.
Mhm.
Let that dry, And then they'll use Yorkshire grit. The one that I have tried, as far as grits are concerned, what's that stuff? The abrasive paste. There's a company in Pennsylvania, Axe, ACKS. They're on, you can find, I Googled it, abrasive paste, and their name came up. I think it's $29 plus shipping for a tub. It's about yay big. They send you that and a 4-ounce canister of carnauba wax. They call it their finishing wax or whatever. One of the things with that I found, I tried the Axe on this. When you see them doing it on a demo, they wipe it down for a few minutes, and then they go right to a hard wax finish. I can't believe it's dry enough yet. I found that on a day like today, when I did it with the Axe, it still felt tacky to me, even after 5 minutes of buffing. What you're supposed to do is you lather it on, you use the same cloth that you used or paper towel that you used to apply it, and you rub it in until you can't feel the grit cutting anymore. Take a clean piece of paper towel, and now you're just simply removing the residue. There's always a little bit of something that stays on that once I put wax on it, it got real tacky. I waited 3 days for it to feel like it was hard and dry enough.
On camera.
Hampshire Sheen makes 2 kinds of finishing waxes. One is his high gloss wax. The other one is microcrystalline, is a carnauba. You put that on, that's what this is. And it's hard as a rock with your fingers. Even on a hot, sticky day, I can't get through the wax finish. It gives more of a lacquer feel than a wax feel. If you're familiar with using beeswax, I was using pure beeswax for the longest time, and it felt okay, but eventually it got soft and tacky, and it would wear off. This apparently will last a lot longer. So all that jibber jabber, this has been drying. So this is the honey. And this is, I just washed the whole thing with, hence I don't have much of this in there anymore. It looks, this is it here. It looks quite orange coming out of the bag, out of the bottle. But it goes on, let me get a fresh spot here. And so this tends to bleed the whole thing together, and reds and yellows make orange. I do know a few things about paint and mixture and stuff. If I were to throw some blue in here, it would turn to purple, but it would also darken it a little bit. Let's go. You see this line here? We're going to blend all that so that it looks orange. And all I'm doing is with the same cloth, a little more pressure, and pick up the pace a little bit. And you see how it's kind of, it's burnished it down to where it's not as bright a yellow. So it can be worked at to where it's, you don't want any real bare spots. And in here, there's a lot of green, so I could add yellow to make it to leach all of those colors together. I call it leaching because I feel like I'm dissolving it into here and it's flowing into the other area. But Martin would say you're moving the color, which kind of made sense to me when I heard him say that. I thought, oh yeah, it is moving. And then I realized I had just sprayed some lacquer. So you can spend time playing around with this. I can get up into the, once I've done the sides and stuff, then I'll go up to the top. The top is usually easier to do. Ooh, hi. Because I can just sit it down. And here's where we can, okay, yeah. So I could add a drop of green. I'll use the same cloth. So I'll hit it with green just because and see what I'm doing? I've got the bottle here in my left hand. That cost me 10 cents because I spilt it when the bottles were relatively new because I went to hold it. You don't want to do that. You apply it to the rag, put the bottle down. He sells spray nozzles for the 125 milliliter bottles, which are $12.50, I think, US. And as I say, there's enough there to last you a couple of lifetimes as far as I'm concerned. The way I'm using it here, a little goes a long, long way. So that was yellow, and go with the grain, against the grain. I don't care how it's amazing. And one of the things that I did notice is I had a lot of worm-eaten wood. This stuff does not like the powdery residue that the worms leave behind, the poo. This stuff doesn't absorb into the poo very well. So you either have to dig it out or just leave it the way it is. I tried flooding the thing with dye and it seemed like the wormholes were laughing at me. So I just gave up. So basically, I mean, I would either force it to dry, and then here's where they would use I like to use Nibrex first, then the sealer. It just seems to be a better flow of work. Spray the sealer on, wait a few minutes, denib that, and then apply your wax, and then you glue in your branch, and basically that's it. See this one here. Where are we? Oh, okay. Let's just go here. See the shine that's in there? So this is, I had finished the inside. So this is the sequence that I used to do them originally. I would use do the inside, sand it, seal it, put a coat of wax, same to this side here. So then when you're finishing, this is the one that we just did. So when you're finishing the outside, the inside is done. It's fini, as we say. Where is it? So that blemish, it's still there. It's got a little bit of color in it, but you're not going to hide it. It's not paint. You will see through them. Now, I've been talking about intrinsic colors. I also have tried trans tint. I had bought some, oh my God, a long, long time ago. Tried it once and I thought, this is nuts. I'm never gonna do this. So it was still on the shelf. I tried the yellow. I don't know if it was because it was so old. I mixed it with water because I was using it with this. And I don't know if the two didn't react properly. I don't see why they wouldn't, but that yellow got real powdery on the surface. I could literally just brush it off. This, if you were to abrade it and then put your sealer and then use the Yorkshire grit or the axe, God, I keep forgetting that term, the abrasive paste, you will find some of the color comes off onto the rag. It doesn't really affect the final finish. You can wipe all day long. There's only so much that will come off. However, that trans tint, it came off with just my finger. I didn't have any sealer on it, but this, if I have to rub really, really hard for it to transfer to my fingers. So, and the other stuff, I don't know. I know Nick Agar has a whole line of Chromacraft. They're mostly paints. I don't know if they have stains, because he's into stenciling and spray painting and that sort of thing. But anyway, I can't think of anything else. Did I leave something out?
Marcel, you mentioned Jerry Osgood.
Yeah.
Well, 2 days after our next month's meeting, which is September 18th, I don't know if he'll show up or not. He's not in very good condition, I don't think. But Jerry Osgood, who is still alive, will be honored as one of the founders of the Guild of New Hampshire. Ted Blatchley is in close contact with him. And he's one of the list of, the only one who's deceased is Roy Noyes. I'm sure you remember Roy. He's the only one of the founders that's deceased. The rest of them have all been identified and are being honored with brass plaques at the September 18th meeting as founders of the Guild for our 1 year delayed 30th anniversary meeting over at Homestead.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
so you're certainly welcome to show up there at the anniversary meeting. There'll be a lot of old memories for you to see some of these old guys.
Believe me, I go back to those days in my head.
Yeah.
a
Dave
lot.
Emerson is one of them, along with Jerry Osgood, John Siegel, Steve Cunliffe, David Lamb and Terry Moore.
Oh, wow. I knew David, but Terry Moore too, huh?
Yeah, John McAuliffe, Paul Tullier, and Ted Blatchley. They're all founders.
What a crew.
30 years, we've come a long way in 30 years.
Yeah, you guys are up to what, 700 members now?
750 approximate.
So Marcel, you're just doing a wax finish.
Not tonight.
No. But on your pieces,
Yes.
it's just a wax finish.
Yes. Yeah. I tried it, Ron. Most of the stuff, if I was doing a bowl or whatever, I played with Mahoney, wipe on poly. The spray just seems to lay down better, faster. And then I always used to tell people, if you want something that somebody is going to take in their hands and hold it like this rather than just like this, wax it. It's got that sensuous feel to it. That Hampshire Sheen stuff I found is, I haven't tried a whole lot of waxes, but I took the bait, hook, line, and sinker, and I ordered that stuff from Jeff. It's odd that we're having him next month because, when I heard that last time, I thought this is going to sound like it's orchestrated, but it isn't. It's just synchronicity, I guess. That wax is the high gloss. If I should have brought it, but
I have it.
yeah, no, I mean, we, I'm not, I don't, I'm not into it tonight. But this here is the Hampshire Sheen High Gloss and then the microcrystalline over the top of it. And it's rock hard. It's what I like with the wax. Yeah. See, this is the high gloss. The microcrystalline is a blue label, same size. 20 something dollars.
Yeah, I have Renaissance wax, which is microcrystalline.
Yeah, there's a lot of other companies out there. It's just I belong to a Zoom club, Wood Turning 360. We have a once a month a professional demonstrator. Like last month we had Glenn Lucas for 2.5 hours doing his Viking bowl. And look them up, woodturning360.com. It's a recurring subscription, $5 a month, I think. But every month you get a professional and then a follow-up 2 weeks later of show and tell discussion and that sort of thing. Most of the guys are from England, but they're Australian, a couple of guys from France, Canada, US. They're coming from all over the place. There's another group, Wood Turning Zoom Club, that meets on Wednesday night. Well, it's Wednesday. I'm sorry, Wednesday night their time. We're 5 hours earlier than them. So when they're having a meeting at 7 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon here. So those of you that are working, and that's when you can go to YouTube, find the other stuff. But another one that I promised myself I was going to mention, Pat Carroll. These are all guys that I've not met them, but they wrote articles for Wood Turning magazine, which I was subscribed to for a lot of years. And Pat Carroll does a Meet the Wood Turner every 2 weeks. And that's free. That's on Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock. And if you go to patcarroll.com, you can sign up so that you get a note. He'll send you an email notifying you that I think Steve Sinner is the next demonstrator this Sunday. That's the basket weave illusion guy, which I'm not really into, but sometimes the stories they tell, the history that they have, like Jim and I were just talking about the guys that started the guild. I'm getting old, and I'm trying to. I reminisce a lot, and I really appreciate the stories and the reminiscing and the memories that it all brings back. Because wood turning has been wonderful to me. It's really been a great ride.
And Marcel, I want to throw something at you to try for finishing. I think Ron Marcoux has a sample that I've made for him, but I'm not sure if he's ever used it. What I do is I take a 4-inch square of t-shirt material, cotton cloth, just a small piece, a 4-inch square, and I soak it in melted.
Wait one second, Jim. Wait. Our speaker just kicked out. You just went back up, Jim.
Okay.
We missed it from t-shirt.
I take a 4-inch square of t-shirt material and I soak it in a saucepan with melted carnauba wax. I take pure carnauba wax, and I buy it in pellet form, and I melt the t-shirt into it. I melt the wax and soak the t-shirt into it. That t-shirt comes out, and I get probably equivalent of about 4 or 5 apples by just putting the apple on the lathe, spinning it at very high speed, the max speed you can get your lathe to run, and rub that cloth against it. And it'll, you need to protect your fingers because it'll melt the wax. The friction will melt the wax right into the wood and leaves an incredible finish. I just made a batch of about 50 mushrooms, and they all have that wax finish on them.
Yeah. See, the other advantage to the wax, and especially the way you're using it, if you melt it, it's going to go into the pores of the wood, into the open cells, and it tends to fill it in. So it almost gives it a translucent look.
Yes,
That
exactly.
without feeling plastic. That's
Right.
the thing that I've had a hard time with a lot of finishes is like the CA finish.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
It's
it
plastic.
just
Yep.
feels plastic.
Right.
It's artificial.
Yeah.
If it's wood, it's got to feel like a living organ. I got to take these off.
You don't lose the texture of the wood, but you get that perfect shine.
Yeah. Oh, carnauba is it a petroleum byproduct? I don't think
No,
so.
it's from a plant.
No.
It's the nut.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's earth friendly.
Jim, where do you get the wax?
I buy the carnauba in pellet form. I got it on through eBay or through Amazon. I started out, one of the demonstrators was mixing it. I think it was the Seacoast demonstrator was mixing carnauba and beeswax pellets to get a paste.
Yep.
And I didn't like the paste because the paste leaves fingerprints after a while.
Right.
Sooner or later, no matter how hard you make it, it leaves fingerprints.
It's the beeswax in it.
Yeah, right. It comes through.
It tends to soften the carnauba. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can use the carnauba over the beeswax as like a sealer, but it seems like it's defeating the purpose. Like,
Yeah, that defeats it because it does soak through after a while. It softens the wax after a while. What I haven't tried is putting, after I've put the melted carnauba on, I have not tried putting Renaissance wax on top of that. There you go. Ron's
I think
got
the
the
hemp
carnauba
machine's
wax.
a mix of carnauba and Renaissance, or carnauba and microcrystalline. That's what's in here.
Yeah, there is some in there.
Yeah, it's carnauba, microcrystalline, and mineral spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mineral spirits, I
it-
think, defeats it because it never dries.
It depends how hard you want it.
Yeah. I want a
'Cause mineral
fingerproof.
spirits will dry. Mineral oil doesn't.
Yeah, I like it fingerprint proof.
Yep.
It's the stuff you throw in a craft fair and everybody wants to touch it. And then you got to
Well,
take
yeah,
it home
it's
and
wood.
rebuff it.
No, the trick is, Jim, you got to sell it right then and there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, well,
Don't bring
Marcel,
anything home.
thank you very much.
A lot of
Thank you.
notes here, Marcel. A lot of notes.
Yeah. Cool.
Good job there, Marcel. Good job.
Thank you, Marcel.
This was fun. Thank you.